LG announced today that it will leave the mobile phone market. Oh my gosh, they're pulling out. The South Korean company's devices are expected to be discontinued at the end of July. The company says it will keep producing as usual until May to build up replacement parts stock. But imagine who would want to buy a product knowing that.
LG arrived in Brazil in the early 1990s, and throughout the entire 2000s, it became practically eternalized in the minds of Brazilians, with devices that marked an entire generation. The flip phones and the flashlight phones are two icons of the brand, capable of warming the heart of any nostalgic person. But long before entering the Brazilian market, LG was already synonymous with cutting-edge technology and creativity. Being responsible for manufacturing the first radio, refrigerator, and television in its home country, South Korea, it was also the first brand to launch the world's first 4K OLED television, and it continues to compete with the giants of the segment, Samsung and Sony. It has never led the smartphone sector in its history. But even so, at its peak in 2013, it became the third largest smartphone manufacturer in the world. And it was responsible for bringing phones with increasingly innovative and sometimes quite strange technologies. LG was the first brand to launch a curved screen phone in Brazil, the G Flex. Also back in 2013, it launched the LG Wing, which does exactly what you're seeing on the screen right now. LG cell phone users are still divided in their opinions to this day. Some fans of the brand absolutely love it, while others completely hate it. But even though LG is a very well-established company worldwide in the electronics and home appliances segment, why did it decide to completely abandon its smartphone division, not just in Brazil, but all over the world? Look, Gold Star, or LG, was already established in American and European markets. It quickly became popular with Brazilians and a favorite brand, even sponsoring São Paulo Futebol Clube for a while. It built two factories, one in Taubaté and another in Manaus, the latter capable of producing thousands of devices daily. These LG factories still produce high-quality products today, such as monitors, washing machines, computers, air conditioners, and many other things that keep it relevant in the market. In fact, it is a pioneer in the concept of the Internet of Things, being the first brand in the world to invent a refrigerator connected to the Internet. Special mention goes to televisions, which represent a segment where LG has been very strong since the era of tube TVs, taking the technology of these devices from this to this.
Mainly, is there a problem?
Perfect. There's nothing here, just something small.
Since the 2000s decade, it has been one of the largest electronics brands in Brazil, accounting for 26% of Vivo's cell phone sales during the 2G era. At that time, it was competing directly with classic models from brands like Motorola and Nokia. In 2006, it launched the LG Chocolate, which sold about 16 million units globally. It also helped LG establish itself as a cell phone brand. It's almost universally agreed that there's a pre-iPhone and post-iPhone era of smartphones, since, from the very first launch, Apple practically dictated to the world what a cell phone should be like.
An iPod, a cell phone, and an internet communicator. These are not three separate devices. This is one device, and we're calling it iPhone. Today, Apple is going to reinvent the phone.
The interesting thing is that a month before the first iPhone was launched, in 2007, LG released the LG Prada, a phone that already had a capacitive touchscreen, challenging the belief that the iPhone was the first phone with a touchscreen as we know it today. The director of LG Mobile at the time even said that Apple blatantly stole the idea of the LG Prada, but even so, the first is not always the best. The LG Prada is a perfect example of the reasons for LG's failure in the smartphone market. Despite being a device made in partnership with a luxury brand, it had a casing that was almost entirely made of plastic. On the other hand, the first iPhone already had a more robust and elegant appearance made of metal and glass. Some top-of-the-line specs of the time, like a Bluetooth, a slot for a micro SD card of up to 2 gigabytes, and a camera with an impressive 2 megapixels, were better than the iPhone, but the product came without Wi-Fi, a feature that had already been available on the market since 2004. In addition, the internal memory was only 8 megabytes, while the iPhone offered 4 gigabytes of internal storage and almost double the battery capacity. LG shot itself in the foot with the device's operating system, which was built in Flash from versions of older devices. One of the problems with this was having a touchscreen phone, but with a numeric keypad instead of a QWERTY keyboard. Apple did its homework by launching its own operating system, which made using the iPhone much easier. And on top of that iOS, even though it was primitive, completely outperformed the operating system of the LG Prada. The LG Prada could have been a phone that would put LG side by side with Apple today, or even make Apple phones not exist at all. But at the time, its price of $849 wasn't competitive in a fight with the iPhone, which was selling for $499. That was the final nail in the coffin for the big chance LG had to stop a giant rival. In 2015, LG's mobile division reported its first negative balance in its annual report. That same year, it lost its position as the second leader in the Brazilian smartphone market to Motorola. Its market share in Brazil fell from 13 to 11.4%. Meanwhile, in the global market, it saw its share drop from 4% to 3.2% the following year. Something was going wrong, and the numbers reported by LG made that very clear. While its competitors were gaining more and more market share, LG was slowly starting to be pushed aside. It turns out that LG, despite being so innovative, didn't let go of the 2000S spirit in its cell phones. At the start of this video, I showed the LG Wing, which, though exotic, felt like another desperate LG attempt to innovate smartphones. Well, now I present the model KU950, which maybe Iron Man fans will remember. The comparison between these two models, especially considering that there's at least a decade of difference between them, makes it clear that despite its capabilities, LG had this attachment to launching trends in a market that was no longer just theirs. This avant-garde spirit was noticeable in the devices. And if you think about it, it seems like LG saw the cell phone market more as a fashion show than anything else. That wasn't the case for brands like Xiaomi, Samsung, and Motorola, which pretty much swept up LG's market share since 2015. These brands realized that the recipe for success was simply to keep improving what already worked, and not to keep coming up with new gimmicks every semester. Thinking back to the cell phone displays across Brazil over the past decade, there were always the more classic models from Motorola, Samsung, Apple, and the quirky ones from LG. So, imagine yourself in the following situation. You need to buy a new phone, and all your friends have so-called normal phones that don't freeze and overall have good performance. Some of your friends even have iPhones. Seriously, would you really want to buy the phone that does weird things? In 2021, LG said it would end global phone production. The official statement on LG's website caught the brand's fans by surprise. At the time, the country was shocked as Ford had also announced it was leaving Brazil that same year. And speaking of Ford, I have a video here on the channel where I tell the untold truth about why the automaker Ford left our country. So, if you want to watch it later, I'll leave the card up here to make it easier for you to find. As much as LG tried to bend and stretch or even become two, for many people the fate of the mobile phone division was already clear long before the shutdown announcement. Their factory in Taubaté was responsible for producing the cell phones, and the end of this division of the company came with a few hundred layoffs. According to LG, out of the 1,000 employees who worked there, about 700 would be laid off. And apparently, a lot of people were left stranded. If you're from Taubaté and know someone who worked there, leave a comment below about how this event ended at the factories, and I guarantee your story will be very welcome here in the comments. The few models that carry the LG brand, like the G series and the K series, couldn't compete with the competition, which was already well established. I'm not only referring to technology, but also marketing. LG's reputation reached a point where if they released a flagship, no one cared anymore. An example of this was their last phone, the LG Velvet, released at the end of 2020, a beautiful and elegant device. But it had the tough mission of reviving a segment that hadn't been profitable for 6 years. It was launched for about 4,000 Rs. The problem is that Xiaomi has models just as good as it, which cost half the price. And if someone really wanted to spend 4,000 Rs on a cell phone, options from Samsung and Apple would come into the equation, where LG wasn't always the answer. So even though it's a decent phone, it was doomed from the start to fail in the mission of reviving LG's mobile division. In the end, LG missed out on the high profits from high-end phones, like those of its rivals Samsung and Apple. And without the sales volume of mid-range and low-cost phones from Motorola, Xiaomi, and Samsung. It sounds crazy, but for a company to do well in the smartphone market, it has to create an emotional connection with its customers. That emotional connection will probably make the customer loyal to the brand. Samsung and Apple are experts at creating that emotional connection with their devices. Big launch events, pre-sales, aggressive marketing campaigns, and so on. If you already have one, you'll at least feel anxious to get or see what's new with the latest iPhone or the new Galaxy. Even if you don't have a phone from either of these two brands, you'll at least consider getting one in the future. And that kind of appeal was something that LG couldn't create. Now let me ask you, you there, watching this video with an iPhone, for example, do you consider switching brands when you buy a new phone in the future? It's very likely that you don't. And that's not just my opinion. This chart shows the level of user loyalty for each smartphone brand. Apple is at the top. The exit of LG from the cell phone market is undoubtedly a tragedy, not only because we lost a bold division of the company, but also because of a basic market principle: competition. In this case, is decrease. In a way, LG died, but it's doing fine. From a strategic point of view, their attitude makes sense. It remains a very strong brand and still has the trust and loyalty of many of its customers. But what about you? What do you think about all this? Leave your opinion about LG phones here in the comments. Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Marcos. I hope you're all doing well. First of all, I would like to thank Gabriel for suggesting the idea for this video's topic. And just a reminder to everyone that I have enabled the option to become a member of the channel. And now you can support our project and the continuation of our videos. Because it may not seem like it, but behind all of them, there are some costs. So, if you become a member, know that you are supporting a channel that always strives to deliver the best possible quality content. All right, so thank you very much. I'll see you inside the members area and see you in the next video.